Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 21. Tvam Atmana Manam Avehi Amogada Parasya Pumsaha Paramatma Mana Naha Kalam Tam Praja Patam Shivaya Tan Mahanubhava Dayo Yatam.
Translation. Your goodness has perfect vision. You yourself can know the soul.
Girish, looks like you got cut off. Okay, while they connect again, I'll carry on. Your goodness has perfect vision. You yourself can know the super soul, personality of Godhead, because you are present as the plenary portion of the Lord. Although you are birthless, you have appeared on this earth for the well-being of all people. Please therefore describe the transcendental pastimes, supreme personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, vividly. Text 22. Idam hi pupshashta pasha shrutasya va shristasya shrutasya cha budi tadayo avichyuto rita kavibhid niropito yad tavishloka punanavarnam. Translation. Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerities, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental prescriptions of the Lord as defined in the choice poetry. Text 23. Girish, are you back again? No. Aha puratita bhave bhavam muni nasyastu kasyachana veda vaginam niropita palakaiva yoginam Srisasane Pravishi Nirvi Vikshatam. Translation. Amuni, in the last millennium I was born as the son of a certain maidservants engaged in the service of Brahmanas while following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of rainy season, I was engaged in the pastoral service. Text 24. Te mai apektai kila chapale ripike kante drita tridanake no vatini chakruha kripam yadyapi to yadashana Shushamane Mudayo Vipapasini. Translation. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty. I did not speak more than required. Text 25. Vijishitanipa mono vitotijai sakrits pavunjay tadapastagini vishaha eva prabhistasya vishuddha cetashas tadava ivatma ruchihi pajayate. Translation. Once only by the permission I took the remnants of the food, and by so doing all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at the time the very nature of the transcendental became attractive to me. Text 26. Tatra maham Krishna kata pragyatam anugraha anugranav srinavam manoharaha Tashradaya me napada vishnevataha viyashravasi amra nama bhavat ruchihi. Oh, Girish, are you back again? Translation. Okay, I'll just read the translation for verse 26. of Vyasadeva in that association, by the mercy of those great Vedantas, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna, and thus listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step. So we start from text 27. If you could just speak slightly closer to the microphone. Thank you.
Text 27. Tasmiman Stada Labda Rucher Mahamate Priya Saravasi Askhalita Matir Mama Yayaham Etatsad Asat Swamayaya Pasyamayi Brahmani Kalpitam Vare.
Translation. O great sage, as soon as I got a taste of the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both the Lord and I are transcendental.
Text 28. Itham Sarat Pravashi Kava Ritu Harer Vishwavato Me Musavam Yaso Malam Sankirtaya Manam Munibhir Mahatmabhir Bhaktihi Pravatama Rajastamo Vaha.
Translation. Thus, during 2 seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear these great soul sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of the Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings of the modes of passion and ignorance vanished.
Text 29. Tasyaive vam menur raktasya pashchitasya hatainasah shraddha nasya balasya danta syanucha rasya.
Translation. I was very much attached to those saints. I was gentle in behavior, and all my sins were eradicated in their service. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. I had subjugated the senses, and I was strictly following them with body and mind.
Text 30. Nanam gudyatamam yatsya shabda gavato vitam anvavo jadam kamishanta krupaya dina vatsala.
Translation. As they were leaving, those Bhakti Vedantas, who are very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject which is instructed by the personality of Godhead himself.
Text 31. Yenaivaham bhagavato vasudevasya vedasah mayanubhava bhavam vidam yena gachanti tatpadam.
Translation. By that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him.
Text 32. Tatsam suchitam brahmam mamas tapatraya chikitssitam ya ire bhagavati karma brahmani bhavikam.
Translation. O Brahmana Vyasudeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord of Godhead, Sri Krishna.
Text 33. Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena subrata tadeva ramayam dravyam na punati chikitsitam.
Translation. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing.
Text 34. Evam runam kriya yogaha sarve sanshruti hetavah ta evatma vinashaya kalpante kalpitaha pare.
Translation. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused this perpetual bondage became the destroyer of the tree of work.
Text 35. Yadatra priyate karma bhavat paritoshanam jnanam yat dhaninam yatnam hi bhakti yoga samanvitam.
Translation. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord. And what is called knowledge becomes commitment factor.
Text 36. Kurvana yatra karmani bhagavachi shaya sakruta grunante guna namani krishnasya nismaranti cha.
Translation. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities.
Text 37. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Padyam Na Yana Viruddhaya Nama Sankarshanaya Cha.
Translation. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva, along with his planetary expansions, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarsana.
Text 38. Iti mrityam vitanena mantra murtikam yajate yagna purusham sa samyak darshana human.
Translation. Thus, he is the actual seer who worships, in the form of transcendental sound representation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who has no material form.
Text 39. Imam svanigam brahman vaidya madanusthikam ada me gnanamay sharyam swamismam bhavam cha keshava.
Translation. O Brahmana, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was endowed first with the transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential part of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate loving service.
Text 40. Tvamapya dabrashrita vishrutam vibho samapyate yena vidam bubhu sitam prakyahi dukhai mru hurdi manam sangasho nirvana mushanti nanyatha.
Translation. Please describe the Almighty Lord's activities, which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men, and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Girish Bhai and Falguni. Mataji, that was really nice, well recited. Sorry about the technical hiccup you had, but you kindly joined back in the game, so thank you so much. So today's verse is Canto 1, Chapter 5, verse 30. So if anybody wants to volunteer to read the purport, do raise your hand, otherwise I'll carry on. Jnana Vyatmana Vyatad Shakshar Bhagavato Titam Avavocham Kamishantaha Kripaya Dinavatsalaha. Word translation. Jnanam, knowledge. Vyatmanam was confidential. Yat, what is. That, Shakshat, directly. Bhagavat Utitam, propounded by the Lord himself. Avavacham gave instruction. Kamishyantaha, or departing from. Vipaya, by causeless mercy. Dinavatsalaha, those who are very kind to the poor and meek. Translation of Prabhupada by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As they were leaving, those Bhaktivedantas were very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject, which is instructed by the personality of Godhead himself. Okay, no raised hands, so I'll just carry on with the purport. A pure Vedantis or Bhaktivedanta instructs followers exactly according to the instructions of the Lord himself. Personality of Godhead, both in the Bhagavad Gita and in all other scriptures, has definitely instructed men to follow the Lord only. The Lord is the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. The whole manifested creation has existed by his will. By his will, when the whole show is finished, he will remain in his eternal world with all his paraphernalia. Before the creation, he was in the eternal abode, and after annihilation, he will continue to remain. He is not, therefore, one of the created beings. He is transcendental. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, and long before the instructions was imparted to Arjuna, the same was instructed to the sun god, and in course of time, the same instruction, being wrongly handled and being broken, was again instructed to Arjuna, because he was his perfect devotee and friend. Therefore, the instruction of the Lord can be understood by the devotees only and no one else. The personalist who has no idea of the transcendental form of the Lord cannot understand this most confidential confidential message of the Lord. The expression most confidential is significant here because knowledge of devotional service is far above knowledge of the personal Brahman. So I'll just read that sentence again, because I'm going to be testing you. The expression most confidential is significant here because knowledge of devotional service is far above knowledge of the personal Brahman. Jnanam is ordinary knowledge, or any branch of knowledge. This knowledge develops up to the knowledge of the personal Brahman. Above this, when it is partially mixed with devotion, such knowledge develops to knowledge of Paramatma, or the all-pervading Godhead. This is more confidential, but when such knowledge is turned into pure devotional service and confidential part of transcendental knowledge is attained, it is called the most confidential knowledge. The most confidential knowledge was imparted by Lord Brahma to Arjuna, to Uddhava, etc. Translation: as they were leaving, those Bhaktivedantas are very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject, which is instructed by the personality of Godhead himself. So recite the invocation prayers. Please to join in. Om Jnana Timandasya Jnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sadhana Raghunatha Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savaduta Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sadhana Ladita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopishwar Gopika Kata Radha Kata Namaste Tapta Kachana Gauranye Radhe Vinavaneshware Vishabhana Sadadevi Pana Mami Hare Priya Vajjakapa Tarubhyasya Vipa Siddhubhya Vacha Atitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Vishnu Krishnaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Chandra Swami Tinamane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschachari Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you and welcome everyone joining in for today's session of chat. First of all, I'd like to offer my obeisances to my spiritual master, Dr. Joe Swami, and to Jagat Guru, Sri Prabhupada, and to all of you, and ask for your blessings so that I may say something which will be pleasing to the Supreme Lord and also very spiritually inspirational to all of you. So the verses continue on from with Narada Muni instructing Vyasadeva who is perplexed because he is not very satisfied with the translation of the Vedas that he's produced. So Narada Muni has instructed him about writing about glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, Sri Krishna, and their wonderful pastimes, and the purpose of these pastimes itself. So here in this particular translation, when Narada Muni is talking about the Bhaktivedantas, he's remembering his childhood when he was a little boy in his previous life, because he was the son of a maidservant. The maidservant had the opportunity to serve the sages who had come to participate in some sangha at that particular time. And Narada Muni, being a little boy, the Vedantas or the Transcendental sages were very, very affectionate and were impartial of their dealings with him. So they blessed him that he would become a great devotee in his next life. And also, by the permission he took of the sages, he also took the remnants of the sages, and that way he would become also transcendental purified in his next life. Plus, Narada Muni is an incarnation of Krishna himself, who's wandering around in this universe due to an unfortunate, or rather a fortunate situation where he travels around with his Veena, glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, singing his wonderful glories, helping devotees in stress or kings who have difficult situations in their lives. When you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, many of the pastimes, the mediator is actually Narada Muni, whether he's actually enhancing the pastimes of the Supreme Lord or causing obstacles in the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But he has a particular role, a particular purpose, and he's explaining to Vyasadeva that while he was actually serving these great sages, due to the association with the devotees, he was able to become purified. And a good example of this is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was actually traveling around all of India with his associates, he came to many places, many villages where they were not interested in Krishna at all. And Lord Chaitanya actually explained that, why have I come to this material world where they have no sort of love and affection for the Supreme Lord? And he actually mentions that he will take that repercussion, that great sort of misfortune upon himself. Then as he was traveling further along in this journey across India, he came across some wonderful Brahmin boys. The Brahmin boys said, Hari Bo, Hari Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya was so pleased by these wonderful boys who were glorifying the Supreme Lord. And he asked his associates, where are we now? So they mentioned that they were just 1 hour's walk away from the Ganga Devi. And this is where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually praised Ganga Devi because of her purity. He explained that anybody who's in close proximity of the Ganga, because of the nature of the Ganga Devi is pure, so all the people associated or very close to Lord Ganga Devi also becomes automatically purified. Therefore, it's explaining the importance about sadhusanga. It's so important that we have that association with the devotees. Because by nature, the devotees are pure, they're the most confidential servitors of the Lord. Shakshadaridvin, Samasa Sastri, and Yasha Prashada, Bhagavad Prashada. Because they're the confidential servitors of the Lord, they are actually empowered by the Supreme Lord to glorify and empower all the devotees or non-devotees to come into Krishna consciousness. When we talk about early on in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, first of all, of course, he's talking about Bhaktivedanta. I'll go into that a bit later on, but I'll also explain down here where Krishna, Srila Prabhupada explaining about the qualities of Lord, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He mentions he is the creator, the maintainer, and the annihilator. But sometimes we actually represent three personalities as the creator, maintainer, and the destroyer. So does anybody want to say who those three personalities are? Hopefully you're all there listening and you can hear me. So normally the creator, he refers to Lord Brahma, the maintainer as Lord Vishnu, and the destroyer is, or the annihilator is Lord Shiva. So these are the three personalities that are normally associated with creation, maintenance, and annihilation. But in this case, it's actually the Supreme Lord who is the creator. Supreme Lord is the maintainer. Supreme Lord is the cause of the annihilation. But because of his, I suppose, ability to pass that Shakti, that energy, that empowerment to these three personalities, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, they are considered to be the controller of this creation. But actually that creation has not come by themselves individually, but it's come by the empowerment of the Supreme Lord. But the Supreme Lord, although he creates, maintains, annihilates, even though before this creation, he always existed, his eternal abode always existed, the Loka Vrindavan. As we see the material universe, it's only a portion of the whole supreme universe. It's considered only a quarter of this whole manifestation. It's considered to be the material world. 3/4 is associated to the spiritual world, which has always existed, always permanent, and the Supreme Lord is always existing before the creation of the material world, and is also existing in this eternal abode, even after the annihilation of the supreme, the material abode. It just explains in, like in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse, just like the bright wind blows and rests within the sky. So this whole material universe, the whole material manifestation, lies on the transcendental abode of the Supreme Lord himself. So we have to remember that the Lord is always the eternal. Sorry, just trying to mute people who accidentally turn their mics on. So we just got to remember the Supreme Lord is always existing. You know, never was a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall ever cease to be. So even individually, all of us, we've existed since time immemorial because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord himself. So just going back into this particular purport, Krishna says that he first instructed this knowledge to the Supreme, to the Sun God, Viveshwan. Now, does anybody know that particular verse from the Bhagavad Gita? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, I first imparted this transcendental knowledge to. Okay, I'll share this with you. It's from chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, Transcendental Knowledge. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Imam Vivashvate Yoga Bhakta Vamahamabhayayam Vivashva Manave Praha Manu Ikshvakave Pravet. Personality of God, Shri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivashvan, and Vivashvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. Manu in turn instructed it to Vishvaku, and it goes on further to say, Ivam Parapara Praptam, Imam Raja Shayo Vidu, Shakale Neha Mahata, Yoga Nashta Param Tapa. The supreme science was thus received to a chain of disciplic succession. The saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it appears, to be lost. So here, the particular purport that we're reading, it actually mentions that the due course of time is before the instruction, in the course of time, the same instruction being wrongly handled and being Bhagavad was again instructed to Arjuna. So although millennium years ago, Lord Krishna narrated this transcendental knowledge to the Sangha of Vivishwan, but in due course of time, that knowledge dissipated or got diluted or got changed in so many ways. But because the Lord appears millennium after millennium, whenever there is a decline in religious practice and a predominant rise of religion, that time I discern myself. Why? To protect the devotees and to annihilate the miscreants. He appears as himself millennium after millennium. So 5,000 years ago, he appeared as himself, Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, in his original form. He instructed this Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Arjuna, of course, what were the qualifications of Arjuna? Arjuna was non-envious. He was a dear friend of Lord Krishna. Because of that, he was able to hear this wonderful confidential knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. So what does the word confidential mean in Sanskrit? Guyatmanam. Guyatmanam means confidential. It's confidential knowledge, but there's a higher level of it, which is transcendental knowledge. So originally knowledge itself is called jnana. So does anybody know what the word for confidential knowledge is? Although I did mention Guyatmanam, but we got the word jnanam as ordinary knowledge. But ordinary knowledge is not really of any benefit until it is actually used for the purpose of Krishna conscious activities or for the knowledge of Krishna. So what is that word? Does anybody know? That word is jnana. So think on that, one of the okay, it's not in this particular verse. Just see if there's another verse with that jnana. Okay. Okay, here, look. So in chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, text 1, Shri Bhagavan Vacha idam tu te guyatamam pavakshami anushave jnana vijnanam sahitam yaj gyatra mokshayase shubhat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved for all the miseries of material existence. Okay, and the second verse goes on to say, Raja Vidya Raja Guya Pavitra Midamuta Mamam Pachakshaga Pachakshagamam Dhamyam Surusukam Katumavyayam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting. It is joyfully performed. So when we talk about the most confidential knowledge, it is not just information that you could Google up, find information from any old teacher. It has to come from an authority, from the Prabhu, Supreme Personality of it. And what is the case of one who can actually hear these wonderful dialects of the confidential knowledge? As I mentioned, is somebody who is never envious of me. Because, Arjuna, because you are never envious of me. Why is that? Because when you're not envious of Krishna, when you're not envious of his pastimes or his devotees, and you have that qualification to become inquisitive. And Arjuna was a pure devotee by nature because he was never envious of Krishna. And that is what we have to try and aim for. We have so many anarthas in our life. We have the 6 enemies: anger, lust, greed, pride, envy, illusion. We're cheated, we're prone to be cheated, we're under illusion, and so forth. We don't have that knowledge or that capacity to understand this confidential knowledge. But by the association of a pure devotee, then we could get that knowledge. So just about a week ago, His Grace Radhika Raman from America, a very wonderful scholar and professor at a university in America, came to the UK and he gave a wonderful class on discourse over 3 days on Srimad Bhagavatam on the topic of forgiveness, and he described particular stories from the Srimad Bhagavatam about forgiveness. And then he mentioned on one of his comments, he mentioned that there was about 90 different commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then at the end, when there was a question and answer, I asked him, well, there are 90 commentaries. How do you know which one is the real one? How do you know which one is authentic? Because every commentary may be different variations in one way or another. So his answer was basically, when you look at the original Sanskrit text and you see the word for word translation, then you can actually understand when those word for word translation is put into translation, then you can see which one is correct and which one isn't. And from his own personal investigation, you can see that Srila Prabhupada was the most authentic, not only authentic because of his translation, but Srila Prabhupada wrote the commentaries. He actually not just made up any old commentaries himself, but he actually took the commentaries from the previous acharyas, Sri Baladev, Vidyabhushana, Sridhar Swami. And if you look at the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, it actually mentions, for my basis to Sridhar Swami for his commentary, because Srila Prabhupada didn't want to add anything, which was different from the acharyas, previous acharyas. Perhaps he may have changed some of the examples from historical purposes to make it more relevant to this modern day that we're living in, this Kali Yuga of the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So it's important that we understand something which is actually a true commentary of the from the previous acharyas. Without that authenticity, without that parampara, then you can blindly be following something which is not real. And here Srila Prabhupada is very adamant about talking about impersonalism. He mentions that quite a lot in a lot of his verses, a lot of his purport about impersonalists, that the impersonalists are not really pure Vedantas. In this case, Srila Prabhupada, his name is Bhaktivedanta. Why is that? Because anything he was translating was given that particular name by Sannyas Guru, because when he was writing all these wonderful books, he was actually translated them in a way that was actually very true to the original words itself. It wasn't concocting anything at all. So the word Bhaktivedanta for the purport is actually meaning a pure Vedanta, pure Vedantas. No, I just have to come in this particular word. But anyway, there was a particular verse which actually mentioned the word Bhaktivedanta. But here, instruction follows exactly according to the instructions of the Lord himself, the personality of God, both in the Bhagavad Gita and in all the other scriptures. It is meant for all the men to follow in this modern age itself. So Jnanam is ordinary knowledge, and Vijnanam is confidential knowledge. But importantly, when Jnanam is mixed with devotion, bhakti, that is knowledge about the Paramatma. So further along, it tells you about that knowledge which is mixed, that bhakti is mixed with jnana, just knowledge, becomes transcendental knowledge. And that transcendental knowledge is even higher than confidential knowledge, because that pure devotional service that you take from the jnana or vijnana, you actually follow those instructions of pure devotional service, you render service to the devotees of the Lord, then it becomes most confidential and the highest level of transcendental knowledge itself. So it's important to understand the difference between jnana and vijnana. Yeah. Okay. And so earlier on I mentioned about the spirit personality of God, translating or speaking the most confidential knowledge. As we can see, he spoke to Vishwa, the sun god, he spoke to Lord Brahma. When Brahma was created by the Supreme Lord on the lotus, which was stemming from the navel of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, when he actually looked around him, he didn't understand where he was or why he was there. And then he heard the words tapa, 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 meaning tapasya, perform austerities. After many, many thousands of years of austerity, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu revealed to him within the core of his heart this transcendental knowledge, and he understood who he was. First of all, he went right down to the bottom of the stem of the lotus flower. He couldn't understand it, and he was just going on and on and on. He couldn't find the end or the beginning of it. Then afterwards, when he heard the word stapa, then he went into transcendental meditation to understand who he was, the purpose and why he was created. And his role has been empowered by the Supreme Lord to become the creator of this material universe and send forth to generations the different species of life, everything that you see around us, the 8,400,000 species of life, that includes the 400,000 species of life of human beings, the plants, the animals, the living creatures within the sea, out of the sea, the birds, animals, aquatics, everything we see around us are all created by the energy of the Supreme Lord, by when he empowered Lord Brahma. And also, when you look at the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's so many wonderful instructions where Lord Krishna has instructed this confidential knowledge, not only just Lord Krishna, but also his devotees. Narada Muni has instructed Prahlad Maharaj, instructed Dhruva Maharaj, instructed King Nabi, many of the other great sages and kings who are very perturbed in their personal life, or disturbed, or wanted to find out more about who they were, the purpose of life. And also, when you look further along the or read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it also mentions about how great rishis like Maitreya Rishi was actually passing that transcendental knowledge to other sages as well, or kings. Like Maitreya Rishi was also part of that knowledge to Vidura. In the same, Lord Krishna also spoke the Uddhava, the Gita, transcendental knowledge about confidential knowledge. And then when you read that particular verses of the Uddhava Gita, what is dialects between Lord Krishna and Lord Uddhava, such a very confidential. He talks about deity worship. It's a very dialect, philosophical discussion. Sometimes when you read that Uddhava Gita, it's even more elevating to read than the Gita he spoke to Arjuna. It's very intimate. He talks about his relationship with the devotees, with the gopis. He talks about the purpose of human life in terms of like supporting deity worship in one's life. And that allows you to become more purified in your developmental Krishna consciousness as well. So even sometimes, many years ago, I do recall attending our house program. I presume that Prabhu was giving this class, and he was explaining about the importance about following the acharyas and the reason why we have to follow these acharyas, because otherwise we dilute it, we make our own sort of concoctions, our own theories. We only go into a tangent and become more perplexed, more disturbed. We feel bewildered in our search or in our transcendental connection to the Supreme Lord and his devotees. So this particular class, this one particular lady raised a comment that she said, why do we need to follow this choice? I'm happy to do my own thing. You know, why should we follow these instructions? I do what I want. I follow Krishna to my sort of level of capacity. And of course, many people do feel like that as well. Many people may come to the temple. I come just to take darshan, give a little donation, and go home. That's enough for me. And, you know, we can't argue with that. That may be their, what do they call it, vocative, that their desire that's limited to their ability. But just like in your own work, you know, you can't just be stagnant at your life. You can't just be making tea all your life or your seniors. You can't just be photocopying documents and reports just for somebody senior in your life. You've got to progress on. You've got to enhance your life. You've got to fulfill an ambition in your life. But all that at a mature level, on a spiritual level, you've got to progress spiritually as well. It's nice to give a donation. It's nice to come take darshan. But can you imagine how much steps Krishna is taking towards you every time you take a step towards Krishna? So in this case, the lady was saying about making our own rules, our own regulations. Fortunately, when you do that, that is very dangerous. That's the most dangerous thing that can happen in your own spiritual life, because you're not following authority. Can you imagine going to an accountancy course and you feel, tell a teacher, well, you know, you've got all these formulas, how to do all these accountancy or all these formulas in engineering about doing structural calculations, but I don't really agree with all of them. I just do what I want to do. Can you imagine the danger you can have if you construct something and you don't use those full calculations by not following the teacher's instructions? You can do some accountancy and all the figures are completely wrong and you're in deficit instead of making a profit or gain. So the instructions that special price is important. If you don't follow it, it becomes diluted and you can end up with a catastrophic situation. And also, not only that, you can become very dangerous and making offenses to others as well. It's almost like saying, well, Lord Shiva's devotees, they follow Lord Shiva, but they're allowed to drink alcohol and smoke ganja. But are they on a pure level? They may worship Lord Shiva to the capacity. But of course, you can understand some people follow certain representatives of the Supreme Lord by taking place in circumstances. But of course, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, men of small intelligence worship the demigods. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods. But my devotees ultimately attain my pure transcendental abode. And that transcendental abode is where there's no repeated birth, death, old age, disease. You are actually completely free from all material anxieties. Of course, when we want to get out of this material world, we always want to be in such a way that we can be connected to the Supreme Lord. It's all very well being free from material desires, but also at the same time, there's material difficulties that we challenge in our lives, also allow us to remember and focus more on Krishna. Why is these difficulties happening? If nothing was happening wrong to you in your life, then you're so fortunate, you must have very good karma, but you have to be careful that you don't use up all your piety. In this lifetime, you may have so much wealth, happiness, good fortune, a lot of good well-being friends in high society, but that's obviously due to your pious deeds, your previous life. But your role in this very rare form of human life is to leave the spiritual world and be with eternally with Krishna himself. So I just end there. I just make sure I've covered everything. Yeah, I've covered everything. Just go back onto that commentary about the Sanskrit words translation from word to word. So I do remember that sometimes Srila Prabhupada would spend a whole night trying to find the right English word translation to the Sanskrit word. And Sri Radhika Ramaprabhu mentioned in his class, there are many, many words in Sanskrit that have no direct translations in English. And of course, in English, meaning any translations in any languages within the world. So can you imagine, although Srila Prabhupada kindly translated these Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita into English for our well-being, because we won't be able to understand Sanskrit, we would have to go in a special scholarly class and learning Sanskrit to understand the meaning. Even to that point when an Indian gentleman told Srila Prabhupada, should your devotees, disciples not go and learn Sanskrit, thereby learning the true meaning of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness from the books. But Srila Prabhupada said, no, there's no need. Why? Because if you start studying Sanskrit, you want to become more and more scholarly, then there's the danger that if you have too much knowledge, then you miss the whole essence of the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam. When you read the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole story is all about wonderful stories of Lord Vishnu capturing the hearts of the devotees, saving the demons, or saving the demigods from the demons, protecting the devotees. But the whole essence is the pure devotional service. Srila Prabhupada's emphasis for his disciples is the pure devotional service, not so much to become a scholar, a specialist in a particular subject. That could be a danger because when you have too much knowledge, you could end up having pride, and that pride only leads to a fall. Before pride comes a fall, as the saying goes. I'll stop there. It's about 5 minutes now. Just any questions and answers, if I could try and answer for you. No, luckily. So let me ask a question to you. What's the difference between jnana and vijnana. I hope I've not been on mute all this time. But you haven't heard the class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Adandavas pranams. This is Mamta speaking. I'll try, Prabhuji. I'm not really listening, but I'll try.
Yeah.
So jnana is just plain knowledge, whereas vijnana is when you utilize that knowledge in the service of the God. And then you might get some transcendental knowledge while utilizing the service. So then maybe you might be enlightened, and obviously you might be in the path of vijnana.
That's very good. Absolutely beautiful. So jnana is normal knowledge, can be any knowledge to ritual activities, but vijnana is actually the knowledge which is used in service of Krishna, and that becomes confidential knowledge. When it speaks with pure devotional service, it becomes transcendental knowledge. Yeah, that's all covered in chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you so kindly. So, who are the three creators, or rather three personalities? Creator, maintainer, and annihilator. And who is the supreme creator?
Supreme Creator is Krishna.
Yeah, good.
And then obviously then comes first from his right side extension comes Balarama, and then from left side is Radharani, and obviously from Balarama then you have again Pradyumna, then Sankarshana and Sudarshana maybe, and again I think 3-4 times they have to, and then Mahavishnu comes from there.
Yes, that's right.
I missed many steps over there, Prabhuji.
No, that's good. So Mahavishnu is the maintainer, and who's referred to the creator? Who's about
Brahmaji, and in the material world is Brahmaji.
Yeah.
And then we have Vishnu, obviously is the protector, they say.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And the annihilator obviously is according to the material world is Shiva.
That's
but then
right.
actually it is Vishnu again who is the full annihilator of everything.
That's right. He's the cause of everything. And he empowers these great three personalities to create, maintain, and destroy this universe. And of course, what is the difference between the spiritual abode and the material abode?
So I think it's the material abode is the reverse of the spiritual abode, the reflection, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And it's also temporary.
And also temporary, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Whereas the spiritual abode, as I mentioned, the Lord, when he creates the spiritual universe, he's always existed before the creation and also after the annihilation. So
it's always
there. Yeah, that's it.
It's not affected by anything.
Yeah, that's it. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna spoke this confidential knowledge first to who? Which is supreme being, personality or personality?
Ikshvaku, the sun god.
Yeah.
Ikshvaku.
So that's to his son, Ikshvaku, and Ikshvaku to Manu, the father of mankind. That's very good. What's your name, Mataji?
Mamta Mataji.
Mamta. Thank you, Mamta Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
You're very, at least you're listening to all the classes. So that's really good. Did I also mention about the story of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ganga Devi? Does anybody remember that story?
What Devi?
Ganga Devi.
Ganga Devi.
Yeah, I mentioned something about when Lord Chaitanya came to a place near Ganga Devi, there were some young Brahmin boys who were chanting the holy name of the Lord, Hari Krishna. What was the reason for that? Can you remember?
I haven't heard the story from this.
Okay, sure. I'll just briefly explain, because it's nearly time's up. I was explaining that when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was actually traveling across all of India, he went to many places, and many places they didn't even know who Krishna was. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very, very saddened. He was saying, why have I come to this forsaken place? But they don't even know the names of Krishna. They felt guilty that he's taken this burden on. So when he came near to a particular village, there were some young Brahmin boys, pure Brahmin boys, that were chanting the names of Krishna. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt so ecstatic when he asked his followers, where are we? And he mentioned that about an hour's walk from here is Ganga Devi. So then he glorified Ganga Devi, considering her to be pure. And because of her pure nature, everyone living near the vicinity of Ganga Devi were also pure. So the idea was that anybody very close to a pure devotee will automatically become very pure. So that was the analogy which I used.
Oh,
So that's the reason when Ganga Devi, of course, she's a great devotee of Lord Krishna by providing this water that's
from the
washes
nave.
all. That's right. Which it comes straight from our Lord Vishnu's lotus feet, top of Lord Shiva, to stop it from being, smashing the whole material universe in this cosmos. And then from there, it flows from the Himalayas. And when we bathe the day, Ganga Devi, it washes countless number of sins accrued for many, many, many lifetimes. So Ganga Devi is considered to be pure. So it's just like the pure devotee, when we have that association of a pure devotee, it can also be purified by all this simple reactions that's accrued over many, many lifetimes. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu.
And one of the final verses I mentioned was, okay, no, I think that's about it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining it. Please forgive me for any mistakes that I've made, and certainly wish you all the best, and hopefully see you all soon at Bhaktivedanta Manapa Janmashtami. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Pachitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavedo Namo Namaha. Jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you,
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Also, thank you to, I think it's Girish,
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Mataji,
Krishna.
for speaking the verses and translation
Thank you,
today.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.